It's showtime.
Ask the podcast coach for January 14th, 2017.
Let's get ready to podcast.
Now you have to dance. There you go. There it is. That music, that fun-filled music that lets you know it is time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I am your host, Dave Jackson, from the schoolofpodcasting.com. And this week, we got two people in the chair. We're going to be talking some Spreaker today. And first, joining me, as always, the jelly to my peanut butter. That's starting to sound weird, isn't it? Yeah. The one and only Jim Collison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. I won't say anything. Let's get right to the guest.
Yeah, and why don't you introduce the one and only guest while I switch back to my other PC?
Yeah, we're super excited to have Rob Greelee with us today. Of course, Rob is over at Spreaker now. Has a great podcast of his own that he's doing over there with Spreaker Live, the Spreaker Live show. And Rob, great to have you on Ask the Podcast Coach.
Great to be back, guys. That's for sure. And can I be the potato chips in the peanut and jelly sandwich?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe the potato chips in the middle of the club sandwich. Maybe Dave and I.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to add a little crunch. You know?
we can in the center. There we go.
But if you hang out with Rob, you will hear all sorts of stories. Rob was into podcasting before there was like podcasting. There will be discussions of real audio players in your future if you hang out with Rob long enough. And what was the weird Microsoft thing? I remember when we were at Podcast Mid-Atlantic, you were talking about some weird Microsoft thing that you were using before. Oh, I wish I could remember.
Actually, very few people know this, but Microsoft actually had, I believe, the first podcasting platform back in 2002 to 2005. It was called Sync and Go.
Yeah.
So it actually worked with the Pocket PC device and Windows XP at that time. And it just basically synchronized audio and video files from a PC to a portable device like the Pocket PC. So I was actually my show was on that platform. There was only 13 content providers at the time, but actually I got paid 25 cents per download.
Nice.
Wow. The Pocket PC. That is
Pocket PC.
There's a phrase I've not heard in a while. Yeah.
Long time. The Pocket PC.
Awesome. Well, one of the reasons, speaking of 25 cents a download, one of the reasons I wanted to bring Rob on today is was it last week that this came out, or was it a week before? How long has it been out? Your ad revenue, yeah. Yeah,
it just came out. Well, actually, it's been in kind of a little bit of a beta testing phase for a couple months now.
Okay.
But it was officially launched with, all of its bells and whistles, at least to this stage here this past week. Yeah, that's right.
Nice. If anybody knows me, if you're new to the show, I love to play with new toys, and went over and signed up. It's super easy all you need is basically your bank account information. You need to upload a W-9 so that, it's that whole Uncle Sam tax purposes thing. And for me, I have that information all the time. So I had it readily available and was up and running in a matter of minutes. And when did your new player come out? I guess your new player isn't that new, but I hadn't played.
Yeah, it's been a couple of months for that one. And it's just, we're constantly taking different areas of the platform and just doing some work on them and making them better. And the whole monetization and the CMS system are things that we've wanted to do in the platform for at least a year and a half. Ever since I joined the company, those were some priorities that I wanted to see happen. And we're kind of moving into a phase right now where monetization, I think, is going to be really important.
Yeah.
Rob, you mentioned there's some limitations to it at this point on this live show. And I'd recommend anybody who's seriously interested in this, go back to the last Spreaker live show, Rob, and Alex talk about it. But for our audience, few limitations. Can you talk a little bit about them? Only pre-roll, some of those kinds of things. What are the limitations?
Yeah, I think that there was a little bit of expectations that went beyond reality on this a little bit. I think a lot of people thought that there was a lot more going on. And we do have plans for mid-roll and more true dynamic ad insertion into downloads and things like that, but those are coming in the future. But this product, this beta product right now is only pre-roll, and it's only available in the Spreaker podcast radio apps on Android and iOS, and the widget web embedded player. So it's only going to play through those two areas of the platform. It's not even going to play on the website yet. So this is really kind of at the beginning stages. We're kind of just lifting this off. As you see over the next coming months, this is going to, more capability is going to be added to it. But that's kind of the limitation. The podcaster doesn't have control over its placement, obviously, because it's always in a pre-roll position. I've gotten a lot of questions about, can we set, locations for the ads to play in our show? And I have to tell everybody you can't do that yet. And you don't have the ability to select the advertiser either yet. So that's the other limitation. I mean, a lot of shows are sensitive to certain advertisers, and they want to have that control. So that piece is also coming too. So when you opt into this, and it's opt-in, it's not defaulted add to your account or anything like that. Then that's kind of the deal that we have right now.
Yeah, that's the thing we should mention. That as soon as you put your information in, I think it opted in for all my shows, and it takes you right to that screen. And if you don't want in, you just go nope. So
yeah, exactly. So you can opt out of individual show series or opt back in. You can turn it off and on like a light switch.
Yeah, Jim, you were going to ask something.
Yeah, there's also a limitation that you need to be on the new CMS, right? So
correct.
For current Spreaker users, if you're on the old CMS, you're going to need to switch over. The setup for that is inside the new CMS. So I was a little confused at first. I was looking for it, and I'm like, oh, that's right. I hadn't switched over to the new CMS, so I popped over. And
yeah, so that's the other part to this too, is that we're still in the transition of moving features from our old kind of way that we had the content management into the CMS system. So more and more of that stuff is going to be in the CMS system over time. So,
so it's opt-in. Does this cost any more to participate in this? Right.
Nope. If anything, it should save you money on your hosting costs.
Right.
That's the goal anyway.
Yeah, Rob, any thought of credit for, instead of going to the bank account, that I could build,
Yeah, actually, I mean, that's a really good comment, Jim, because I did mention that to the team, and I think that will be an ability, I think, in the future, because it just makes sense to actually have that kind of ability. From an accounting perspective, it is a little bit of a mixed bag for the company. It's good to have those things kind of cleanly separate.
Yep, primarily, right? Yeah.
But it's something that has been talked about, and I think it makes sense.
And then when we think about picking our advertisers, can you talk at all about, because I know that's really important for some people, being able to kind of, are you guys thinking like we'll have categories of advertisers that we can pick from, or we can limit out, people may not want tobacco ads on there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's going to be a capability that's really linked up with our ad partner. Triton Digital right now is our kind of our back-end supplier, and then we also work with the AdsWiz folks too. So you've got those folks that would need to be plugged in via an API or something like that to the platform to be able to turn that stuff off and on. Yeah, but I think that's the goal, because currently it does have some geo-targeting in there, so those platforms would be able to target their ads to geolocations. Well,
that's the thing I've noticed. It's not, unless it's just the fact that I've already listened to an ad. I know when I went out and, like I say, I set it up, I don't know, went to get a glass of water, came back, hit play, and heard a Home Depot ad. And I was like, oh, cool. And then I went to like my next, I had a playlist going. So I went to the second episode, and out came, I think it was a Progressive Insurance. And then I hit another one, and it was Sam Adams. I'm like, wow, this is cool. All these big brands. And then eventually I went back and hit again, and I was like, does it know I've already heard an ad and not to do a pre-roll? Or is that the geo-targeting, that maybe at that point there wasn't anybody in my area, which is Ohio? So you're not always going to get an ad then?
I would say probably not. I mean, I don't know for sure. I didn't drill that deep into it.
Right.
But I think, you're probably not going to get an ad every time, just because I don't think that the campaigns are they're going to be scattered around, and sometimes there isn't going to be an active campaign. If you think about how a lot of these advertising campaigns work, they work on a basis of it's like an impression is what they call it. And once that campaign has reached its threshold, and it drops out.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, because that was one of the things that I saw and I went, ooh, this could be it's great. Some people are like, oh, cool, I want this, I want that. And I saw where you could have your player autoplay, which is kind of neat. And then I thought, ooh, but that also opens the door for people writing scripts to just sit there and refresh the page all day and drive up. And I'm like, oh, that could be, we're going to have a new form of Twitter bombing now where people are, you give them something good and they will find a way to throw it right in the trash.
Exactly. And there has been some problems with people running scripts that will actually autoplay to create fake plays. And that's something that, I think all of the platforms that use embedded players that have that autoplay capability built into them are battling on occasion, where there'll be people out there that will try and game the system and try and initiate fake plays.
Yeah. It's one of those things, you give somebody, that drives me crazy. It's like, if only you would use your powers for good.
That's right.
Rob, you guys have a player that we have a kind of the standard player. You hit play, it's audio only, but there's also, and it's not video, but you have a kind of an additional player as well. Can you talk about that? Because that's included in this right now, right?
Well, I think as you're probably thinking of our player that has a playlist capability. Yeah, that basically, it enables you to add all your episodes to, let's say, a separate page on your website or something like that, or in your WordPress blog. And it will play your episodes on a sequential basis, and it will show you the episodes right below the actual player. And I think there's some other companies that have this kind of capability as well. So it isn't necessarily we're the unique one on this, but we did put a lot of effort into making our player really capable and making it really, really very attractive. So you can add, artwork in the large window behind the player and things like that to brand it more to your liking. But it is a much larger player, and it occupies a larger percentage of your screen, and it gives you more access to episodes.
Will there be visual ads then as well that come with that capability?
That's one of the cool things.
So when you say visual ads, are you talking about videos, or are you talking about display ads?
Maybe both.
Well, the new ad campaign system does have a what's called a companion tile that actually will display in the web player itself. Or you're hearing a Geico ad, it's very likely that a Geico banner will also appear at the same time that ad is playing. That
actually did happen. That's why, as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh, I forgot to mention the Geico ad. Yeah. Because I was sitting there and all of a sudden my artwork got replaced by the little Geico guy for whatever it was, 30 seconds. And then once the ad was done, the artwork came back and it kept creeping on. I was like, well, that was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a call to action. It's a way for the advertiser to have the capability of a response.
Dave, what are your numbers on Spreaker? And you've got it turned on. What kind of results are you getting back?
Well, again, I've just now here, because you got to remember, for me, as most podcasts, it's going to come through RSS. So I'm just doing web plays, and most of my web plays I have on Ask the Podcast Coach. I'm using Hanny's. What's his simple podcast player, which is a whole other thing. I'm like, how do I get, if I want to really get the maximum of this, I need to swap that out. So that's actually, I'm in the process now of moving my feed over. I'm doing a bunch of stuff behind the scenes. I don't want to bore you with it. So I can then, because now if I don't use that player, it doesn't go into my feed. There's a whole mess thing. But yeah, this is a couple things. I'm going to share my screen here. And so what it is, this is the new CMS. So you can see I have a couple shows on Spreaker, because again, I like to play, and it's a great platform. So when I go here, the player that Rob was talking about, I can just go over here and click on embed. And you see the option here to make it a playlist and all sorts of other fun ththings. But you'll see here, it says, and again, we should mention, this is a beta thing at this point. And you can see we're actually live right now on Ask the Podcast Coach. So, and this is where I had the questions. There are these, the purple ones are requests, then there are impressions, and then there's revenue. So at this point, again, this has been active. It looks like a whopping 2 days for me. And I've had 10 requests. I've had 5 impressions, and I'm assuming at this point, because none of these are yellow, I have no revenue. So what's the difference between a request and impression, and when do these actually count? Because at first I got all excited. I'm like, ooh, I've made 50 cents on the 12th.
Well, I think what you're looking at there, the difference between a request is a request for an episode,
right?
And then an ad was delivered. That's the contrast there. And
we said, because of the geo-targeting, not every play is going to have an ad. So
well, and there's campaign thresholds too. So let's say a Geico comes in and buys 1 million ad placements. Once they hit that 1 million number, then the campaign turns off. So you'll have a rotation of that's happening on a regular basis. So that could create up and downs, in those numbers. So what you're seeing there is not every episode is getting an ad.
Got it. I like I say, we're joking here because again, it's a whole day's. But if I follow this over, this is 50 cents. Is that going to, because does an impression equal automatic?
It's a counter towards your compensation. Okay. Yeah.
Because the reason I was confused is I did have 5 impressions, but over here it says I had 0 in revenue.
There's probably a threshold that you have to reach before you trigger it to actually display. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Now,
what does that mean, Rob, when you say a threshold? Does that mean
these things are usually purchased on a cost per thousand basis, so it may not actually display until you reach 1,000.
By individual show then as well. So what you're saying is I could get 100 impressions, but it's not going to pay out a partial amount of that. It's going to wait until it gets to 1,000.
Yeah, it'll actually total up to 1,000. Then it will pay off. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
And is that by advertiser, or is that by how? What do I have to get 1,000 of? In this case, 1,000 of what?
You as a content creator, it's 1,000 plays basically across, however many shows that you have.
Okay.
And if you're getting that, then that's going to trigger a payout at that point. So there is some thresholds that have to be met because these campaigns are sold on a cost per thousand basis.
Okay.
See, that's the part that I was like, if I look at this, I had 5 impressions, and if I follow this line over, that was 50 cents. And that's when I was like, I got to be doing something wrong, because 50 cents divided by 5 is like a dime an impression. And I went, okay, if I multiply that by 1,000,
yeah.
I'm like, that's $100. That's $100 CPM. And I was like, is that accurate? Is that, because I usually when I hear CPMs on big general things like that, I was like, I was waiting for $6 a CPM or something like
that. Well, it probably is something like that, actually. I'm not quite sure what you're seeing there that's causing that. It's not going to be probably $100 CPM.
Yeah, that's why I was I've got to do something wrong here. Yeah.
That would be awesome.
So, because I went that, I was like, well, I'm excited about this now. And I was like, wow, there's got to be something here that I'm not seeing. So,
Rob, what are you seeing for some of your best? This has been in beta for a while. You guys have been running this behind the scenes a little bit. What are you seeing from some of your best? You don't need to name them, but the best customers that you have or folks that are running. What kind of results are you seeing?
I think in the early stages, we had so few companies on this, or so few shows that were on this. We didn't really have that much results coming through. And I think at the time, we only had it turned on to just our apps, I believe. So the opportunity for impressions were pretty low at the time. So as we roll this out to more areas of our platform, and then also currently, and I can't remember if I told you guys or not, but these ads are not being placed in your downloads.
Right.
So if you're doing any podcasting, it's not going to be in iTunes or anything like that.
Will it play? I've purchased the apps from you guys that for both Android and iPhone. Will it play through those today if I have that app? Will it?
Yeah, it'll play through any mobile app, but it's not going to play through on the website or in your downloads.
And while we're on apps, I've been wanting to ask you for a while. On the iPhone, the app doesn't allow for downloads. it's streaming only. Do you know, are there any updates coming for those apps? They don't seem to be updated very often.
Yeah, so we have a plan to update all of the custom apps to enable downloading. It's kind of like it coming in the next month or so, couple months, I think is what the roadmap looks like. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, that's good to hear. That's probably the number one question I get from my iPhone app users is like, hey, Jim, I can just stream this. Can you fix it? Because they want to download.
I think if you think about Spreaker and its history, it's been primarily a kind of a streaming platform. And I've been really, really pushing the company and encouraging them to make sure that auto download capability is built into everything. And because, I mean, that is the backbone of podcasting. And so the current apps that we have, the Android and iOS app for Spreaker has that auto downloading capability, the playlist playback capability. And unfortunately, we've more recently added that kind of capability into the app because most people were just going in and clicking play. As we move more towards podcasting, as the company has moved that way, it's become more important on the whole download side.
Stephen asks, we mentioned the W-9 for your tax number. What about international people like Canadians?
It's U.S. only right now.
Yeah. So again, it's beta. You're just rolling it out. You're sticking your toe in the water.
Yeah, and we're trying to learn, what's the feedback. We've been getting a lot of different feedback. And a lot of misunderstandings, and I think a lot of it is just kind of hopefulness of what they would like to have the platform do.
Right.
And so it's been a little bit of like, say, okay, I hear you wanted this capability, but we're not there yet, and so we're kind of doing a lot of that right now. Is just kind of like making sure everybody understands what the true functions are today, and have a little bit of vision about where we're trying to go with it.
And then Alan asked just a general Spreaker question. How much bandwidth do you need or in terms of an internet connection if you want to stream live on Spreaker?
Well, we stream everything at 128K. So that'll give you a pretty good basis. The quality is very important to us. We want to have audio that sounds good. And we're willing to put the bandwidth out there to make that happen. There's been companies that we all know of in the past that have been. It's been acceptable to have low audio quality. That's not us.
We mentioned earlier when I was doing my math. Maybe we should set some expectations here as well. Are we allowed to talk like do we have like an average CPM for the advertiser? Is that something that's going to be public knowledge or?
I haven't even heard that myself, so I haven't inquired about what the actual CPMs are. So I'd be happy to find that out, and then I can come back on another episode and we can talk about that if you want to, or I can just share it, with you guys at some point once I kind of get a range. But my guess would be is it's probably going to be on these campaigns, depending on the targeting and the shows, it's going to range between probably 5 and. Now, I'm talking about the overall campaigns. I'm not talking about what the disbursements are based on the split. It's like a 60-40 split is what the campaigns are right now. But it's going to be somewhere between probably $5 and $10 CPMs is my range.
Got it.
Is my guess. It may be higher. And as we add capabilities of dynamic ad insertion, host read capabilities, all those kind of things, those numbers, the goal is for those CPM numbers to go up.
Right.
Because, if you as a content creator are voicing the spots and you're just using our technology to get it in there, or whatever, you should be able to tap into a higher CPM.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because, like you said, it's almost like a wedding. You know what I mean? Everybody's got their ideas of what it should do. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And what if somebody wants to run their own ads? I'm sure that's coming. You've probably heard that. Well,
if you look at Spreaker across the board, we've had this capability of being able to run your own display ads. So you can kind of see that we have this ideology that we want to enable advertisers and show creators to be able to run campaigns on Spreaker. So you can be assured that that's coming.
One of the coolest features that I've always thought other people would see that and jump on board and they haven't if you listen to the show on Spreaker.com, you'll hear me say, hello, Spreaker listeners. This is Dave Jackson. The Ask the Podcast Coach is brought to you by the School of Podcasting.com. Use the coupon code Spreaker and save. And I've always thought that's cool that you can make your own pre-roll if you wanted to. So when I was listening to the playlist I had made, the Geico commercial came on, and then my commercial came on. Then the show finally started.
I mean, it's a really good point, Dave, because you could accidentally create a double pre-roll situation, and that may be okay.
Yeah,
it just depends on what you want to do. I mean, like you, I'm sure your host reads are fun and enjoyable, and so it's probably okay to have 2 pre-rolls as long as there's some fun content there.
Yeah, and it was really quick, so I wasn't doing a 2-minute, I wasn't doing a 4-minute Audible ad like Leo or somebody like that. It was very quick and to the point. But I've always thought that was a cool feature. I was always like, I'm surprised some of these smart players, and I'm like, is there any way I can upload? Can I do the Spreaker thing? And they're like, oh, that's a good idea. We should look into that. And then nobody did. And I was like, oh, that's very much a unique Spreaker thing at this point.
We probably need to take a greater advantage of that at Gallup because, we use Spreaker as the back end for our Gallup podcasts. And, we have like these events coming up in summer and then they expire. And I have the ability to put that in and say, I want you to play this pre-roll here and then stop it at this point. We're probably not taking advantage of that. That may be something I need to go back to work on Monday and explore a little bit because I'd forgotten you guys provide the ability to put kind of your own pre-roll in up front. And that for us, that's perfect because we have these events that we want to highlight, but I only want to highlight them. Now that also only goes for the player, or will that show up in a download as well in the current pre-roll?
No, it's only off of the website and off of our web players.
Okay. Yeah, we get
in the app. Yeah.
We use you guys as an RSS feed. So that sounds like great technology, coming up for us because we may include, we may want to include some of those as well. Hey, can I shift gears, Dave, for a second?
Sure.
Get away from advertising. Rob, you started Spreaker Live Show as a way to communicate to your customers, which is exactly why we started podcasting at Gallup, because I had these global customers around the world. Mm-hmm. I wanted them staying and hearing the same things at the same time. How has you doing that podcast for Spreaker, how's that changed the way Spreaker sees its customers? I mean, are you getting more feedback than you thought before? Are you able to communicate to them faster? Does Francesco feel like that's a great way to reach the customers? Can you talk a little bit about how the podcast has changed Spreaker?
I don't know that it's necessarily changed Spreaker's. Spreaker it's a team that's based in Europe, and they've been very much, they're quite different than most of the teams that you would think of that are running podcasting platforms here in the U.S. Because they have a global view. So the Spreaker Live Show is really kind of more of a U.S.-centric thing. So it's been something that they've needed because generally the staff for Spreaker are not podcasters themselves. They're very technical people. They're very competent in the engineering and programming side, and then the global marketing approaches. But they really didn't have a kind of like this content piece. So when I started, that was about the time when we created the blog. If you go to blog.spreaker.com, and then also we added the podcast. So it's been kind of like a content marketing strategy. So we've used content to be able to better reach the podcast community and online audio creators, and using content to reach them. Because as you guys both know, and that's why you guys do the show that you do, is that there's a lot of new people coming into the space that need to be educated on what the options are and how things work and all those kind of things. And those were the kind of things that I did at the prior companies that I worked for too. And it's the same thing I did at Zune and whatever, was create a show that talked about the platform. And you basically are and I know Libsyn does this too, and others, that it helps better connect with your user base as well as attract new people to the platform based on building a personal relationship. And that's the big thing that I've really always tried to do in this podcasting medium, is to be the face of whatever platform is that I'm working for, and be accessible and be reachable, and to develop conversations and build relationships with the show hosts I think it creates a much deeper bond that helps build your business on a real solid foundation.
Do you feel like you're getting a following and that you're doing that exact thing? I mean, you get to watch your own numbers rise as you do
I mean, doing a podcast about podcasting is not the way to build huge audiences.
Really? That's it. We're done.
Dave, I know I can't tell you that, but I've been doing podcasts about podcasting for a long time, and you take the audience that you can get with it. I mean, there's a lot of shows out there that are doing that these days, and it's always been that way to some degree. And it's a very competitive area, and not every listener wants to be a podcaster or is a podcaster. So, or every buddy out there. So you are catering to a very niche audience. And I had this conversation with the Spreaker team here just this last week. Was we need to do a better job with the Spreaker Live Show of integrating even in with the blog and doing more synchronization of what we're communicating, because I tend to communicate the stuff that I like to talk about, on the Spreaker Live Show. It may not always align with what Spreaker wants to talk about. So I know, Dave, you're kind of interesting in that as well, because you work for Libsyn, but you do, you bring me on this show to talk about Spreaker. So
here's my thought about that. I thought about that today in the shower. I'm like, I wonder if this is going to get me in hot water. And here's my thought on that. Let's say I don't have Rob on the show, because I'll probably play a big chunk of this on the School of Podcasting.
Yeah.
It's not like the podcasting community is going to go, really? Dave didn't talk about it? I guess it didn't happen. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
And I know Todd lovingly will say, well, Dave has an agenda, and I'm like, well, and sure, I'm always, Rob's always going to point people to Spreaker. I'm always going to point people to Libsyn, and Todd's always going to point people to Blubrry. And I think the nice thing about it is we all kind of have that, what are the entrepreneurs call it? An abundant mindset. You're going to pick whoever you want to pick. Here's the facts, make a decision,
I agree.
And so to me, I was like, to me, this was news. This was like, wow, somebody's actually pulled it off, and it's a different thing, because ad insertion really isn't that new. I mean, Libsyn has Libsyn Pro. We've been doing it for a while, but this is a different model. That one you have to pay up front, and then you pay for your bandwidth. This one, you're not paying for your bandwidth, but, we're giving Spreaker, 40% of the deal. So to me, it's a different, it's apples and oranges kind of thing. And it's like I said, it's not like if I don't talk about it, people are going to go, I didn't hear about that. I'm like, well, that's what. So it's like, let's talk about the elephant in the room, shall we?
Well, this isn't the Libsyn Live show.
No, it's not Libsyn Live. No, and I really thought about one of the things that really cheesed me off back in the day is Adam Curry had the Daily Source Code, and I love that show. And the one thing that really ruined it was when Adam started then Pod Show, later Mevio, is he quit talking about everything else in the podcasting atmosphere. And I was like, wait, why aren't you talking about this? And that, because he wanted to only promote Pod Show. And I was like, well, that's not cool. That's not what I tuned in for. Yeah. So I don't want to, I do want to be Adam Curry, but I don't want to be Adam Curry in that aspect where I only talk about Libsyn stuff, because then that's not what my show is about. So I did have a Spreaker question in terms of when I'm doing show notes, how does it handle link? Do I have to start all my links with HTTP to make them clickable? Is that how that works?
Yeah. Currently, we've talked about making more of a what you see, what you get kind of a comment or show notes area, and I think that's coming too. So
yeah, Emily has
I like it. I fashion all my show notes that way, anyways, because I copy and paste them into a variety of those providers, and that just seems to be the most standard. It doesn't look the best. And I get massive feedback from when we try to do this at Gallup, all the designers, they hate that and they want to shorten everything and, make it really clean. And I'm like, I don't trust URLs oftentimes that are hidden behind links. I kind of want to see, and I know you could hide behind, anyways, but I want to see that link. And so I use the full URL and everything I do. Just
and I think that makes more sense. That's certainly one advantage of us doing it that way. It does feel a little primitive at times, though.
No, especially if the link is messy.
Exactly.
From that standpoint, if it's really, we can use Pretty Link and some of those things, kind of clean those up a little bit and give a live, a good live look at it. But I like it.
Yeah, I wanted to mention one thing about your earlier topic about this collaboration or this co-competitive cooperation that goes on amongst Spreaker, Libsyn, and Blubrry. I've known Rob and I've known Dave and I've known Todd for far longer than we've been all competitors of each other. And we're all friends. We know each other very personally, and that's at the end of the day what it is for me. And I think we're all looking out for the growth of the medium. And sure, we're competitors at times. I've been competitor, and other times I've not been competitor. So, and who knows, in the future, I may be doing something completely different and not with a competitive platform. And I'll still be coming on the new media show to talk about stuff. But I don't really talk about Spreaker much on the new media show. Anyway, we talk about important issues in the podcasting space. And that's not a platform for me to promote Spreaker. And I know that Todd kind of looks at it that way as well. And I know, Dave, you've been on the Spreaker Live show before, and so this cross-pollination that happens is maybe good for each of the companies, but most of all, it's good for the industry, and it's good for everybody that we all stay in contact and talk and cooperate, but co-compete too. And I think that's okay.
Well, to me, competition always makes, in the end, the podcast community wins. When somebody comes up with a new feature, you're like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. Now we got to, and to me, really great ideas usually don't come right out of the gate. It's, ooh, that's really good. And then somebody else goes, ooh, but what if it did this? And then somebody else goes, and so it just kind of stacks on each other. I made a video this week just because I was in a Facebook group and they were going off about New and Noteworthy. And I was like, all right, I've had it with this. So I made a video about the truth about New and Noteworthy. And I was looking for a picture of Rob Walsh. And I went to his Facebook page. It was hilarious because there were pictures of, I think it was you, Rob sitting next to Todd, sitting next to Francesco. And it was like all of them. And I think the caption was fun competitors at a meeting, silverware removed for, something like that kind of thing. But when we were at Podcast Movement, it was me, Rob, and Good. Rob. So we always kind of hang out. And plus, it's one of those things where, as a podcast media hosting company, nobody else understands what it's like to be a podcast media hosting company, but another podcast. I mean, me and Mike Dell can share war stories all over, just back and forth about, oh, this guy did this. And, so that's always fun too as well. But, so Emily said, yeah, I'd love to see Libsyn, Spreaker, Blubrry all playing nice together. Yeah. And then maybe eventually we'll have a death cage, some sort of match where we'll, all show up in singlets and wrestle each other. That'll be great fun. Yeah, exactly. Again, I think all of us have, well, number one, all those companies have podcasters in their management and things like that. I think that helps. I think we want the whole medium to advance as well.
But Dave, not everybody in this medium has the philosophy that we have. And as a lot of new companies have come into this space, a lot of kind of old school business practices have followed. And I think it's been frustrating for me to see that happen because I've always tried to foster relationships with everybody in the podcasting community for many years. But I definitely have seen a change over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Rob, how's the response to the new CMS?
It's been great. I think people want it to be better and more integrated even than what it is today. I think once we get there, it's going to be a really interesting tool as we add monetization capabilities and other capabilities that we have in the plans. It's just going to make it a lot easier for people to manage their content.
And the thing I loved about it was it just kind of just happened. It's like the one day I logged in and clicked on my shows and I was like, well, this is a lot easier to navigate.
Yeah.
So
it's all there.
Yeah. It's a good job on that. Awesome.
Thank you. Well, I mean, a lot of this kind of stuff, like Libsyn has had for a long time. I mean, I was a long time customer of Libsyn Pro myself. So I know what you guys had built over there, and not that we were trying to copy anything or anything like that. It was just more the concept of having all of the functions right in a consolidated area.
Well,
the Spreaker platform did have stuff kind of scattered around.
Well, and the other thing that's kind of funny is we mentioned earlier how, ad insertion isn't that new. The last company that did it, and I was like, oh, cool. Somebody's actually got it for the, for lack of a better phrase, the little guy, was audiometric.io. And about the time I was really getting excited about it, they got bought by Panoply. And I was like, oh, bummer. So
down under. Those guys down under. Yeah. It's a really small company. I mean, I had actually talked to the guy that founded that company back before Panoply bought them. And I know it was like 2 or 3 people or 2 or 3 engineers down there is what actually created that company. And I was actually surprised there was a lot of thought that that company really wasn't mature enough to really be a platform that could support like a Panoply network. I think that they had to put a lot of Band-Aids in that to get it to to scale.
I think it's one of those where they had the working demo that was kind of, MacGyvered together, and they went, hey, we got purchased. And they went, oh, that's good. And oh my gosh, what are we going to do now? Yeah,
exactly. It was like an alpha product that got purchased.
Well, it was one of those things. And this is where, again, yours is kind of different, is when I was with them like almost since day one. And I remember I had it was like Jim's Insurance House or something, like some weird ad that somebody had bought ads on. So they had this great tool. They just didn't have any advertisers. And so that's where I think most of these platforms right now are having probably the whole advertise cast and what's the one, Buzzcast. There's a ton of these, just put your show up and people will advertise on it. Well, the bad news is there's no advertisers. You've gone the opposite direction. You went with Triton, who has advertisers. So the minute you sign up, you can start generating some revenue.
Yeah, well, Triton has been the largest online radio advertising platform for many years. I mean, their biggest customer is Pandora. So,
wow.
So it's a platform that's been around for a long time and is known as a quality provider of online audio ads. And so a lot of the big agencies back in New York trust Triton Digital as the tooling to enable this stuff. So you get a lot of as you've seen, Dave, I mean, the quality of the advertisers that are involved on this is probably going to be pretty acceptable to most of the content providers on the platform.
Yeah, the only one that I went, that's going to cause a problem was a Sam Adams ad came out, and I could see some, religious people going, "You can't be promoting Sam Adams on my show."
Yeah, and I got an email, from one of those guys asking me about that. Do I have the ability to go in and select categories, just like what you guys asked me? And I think that makes sense to be able to have that.
Nothing wrong with that. Sam Adams is delicious. It's delicious. It's delicious.
That's right.
Hey,
Rob, go ahead.
I want to take just 2 seconds real quick as time flies when you're having fun. Just to thank our patrons. If you didn't hear it, listen to last week's show when we listened to everybody. But if you donate a certain amount, like Stargate Pioneer from the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast and Glenn Hebert from the Horse Radio Network, you get your little name and your shout out there for that. So if you'd like to be an awesome supporter, just go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And not only do you get the after show, which we'll be doing a little later, you also get, occasionally I throw in other little fun-filled videos. And this week I threw in a thing about how you can have, if you send the same email over and over, canned responses in Gmail, if you didn't know those exist, that's a really cool feature. So I threw that in there. So go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome and become an awesome supporter.
Rob, when we think about Europe versus the United States and we think about different styles of podcasting, because I do feel like it's a little different when we try to take a U.S. style to Europe. I don't know if it works as well. We're a global, Gallups global, and so I think about those things a lot. Do you see big differences, and can you talk a little bit about that? Is there things that work in Europe that aren't working in the U.S. and maybe vice versa from a podcast perspective?
Well, I think just, from a real high level, looking at content that's in Europe or other places around the world, they tend to be localized content. You don't see a lot of shows being produced in other countries around the world that are being consumed in the U.S. It's really kind of an odd thing. A lot of shows that are produced in the U.S. are consumed everywhere in the country, in the world, because they're done in English. But if you look at a lot of the podcasts that are produced like in Germany and Spain and Australia. I mean, not so much Australia, but they tend to be only consumed in their local countries because they're done in local languages. So you have this kind of dynamic, right? And you just have to understand that. I mean, a lot of the younger people in all these countries, sure, they speak English, but it's not their primary language. It's their second language. And the Spreaker team is like this as well. They feel less comfortable speaking English, so they're less likely to be putting out a podcast that will reach a global audience. So that's really what's different. I think what's happening in Europe right now around podcasting, and I've seen it because I've gone to podcast, meetups in Spain and other places around the world on my Spreaker retreats that I go on, is that content creators have a different approach to creating content there too, because they're used to state-run media. So they're not thinking of podcasting in the same way that we are yet. They're still thinking of it as a form of radio. And so they think along those lines. They're not seeing right away a distinction between radio and what they're wanting to do, but they're also, what's a little bit of a contradiction here is that they're listening to a lot of U.S. podcasts. So I think over time, I think that they're going to start producing shows that are more like what we're doing and less kind of radio-like, because they still have a lot of conferences in Europe and stuff that focus on radio, and then they kind of have podcasting as kind of like a bolt-on capability. It's kind of like what's happening with the NAB down in Las Vegas, where radio and television is still the primary, but podcasting is like sliding in on the side and being added as an option, right? It's not being thought of as anything primary yet. And I think that's where the international market right now with podcasting is, but it is picking up and it's ramping up. In various areas like South America has got some huge podcasting networks and huge shows. The popularity is growing, it's spreading. At the same time, it's happening here in the U.S. So I think at a high level, that's what's happening, and you just got to keep that in mind.
From the kind of the European side, I know sometimes Americans are kind of stereotyped as we're rather assertive, and we are not shy to do any kind of self-promotion.
Yeah.
Is that a legit kind of, obviously all stereotypes, I guess that's my thing. Some stereotypes are based on, I have to be careful when I'm right on the slippery slope here, but some stereotypes are based on fact. Is that kind of the truth, like where maybe European people aren't quite ready to, welcome to Motorcycles on Fire, where we, that kind of.
Yeah, I would say that, especially in some of the Asian countries, from a cultural perspective, getting on a microphone and being very kind of out there and putting yourself out there is just not necessarily, really embraced by the culture. And I think in a fair amount of European countries, I believe that's still the case. There's a lot of people there that feel more humble about their existence, and getting on a microphone and broadcasting or whatever, putting themselves out there is not as acceptable. And I think there's also this perception in a lot of countries that media is not an open thing. It's controlled by the government. It's state run. It's more like, in most of those countries, a lot of the media is not necessarily controlled by the state, but it's public media, or it has a partnership with the country or whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the BBC model, right?
Yeah, I was going to say it's
state supported, it has some separation there, but it's not like commercial radio or commercial podcasting in the US. But I believe that's going to change a little bit.
Rob, do you, and I'm an avid fan of Spreaker Live Show, so I encourage everybody to go out there and listen to that. I encourage you early, get more Spreaker content. Early on, you were kind of figuring out the format, what people wanted to hear. And I love the inside baseball at Spreaker. Can we do a little bit of that in the next few minutes? Just anything you want to talk about? We talked about ad stuff getting better. Anything else at Spreaker that we can maybe highlight that might be coming up that you might want to tell folks about?
I think that the big thing also is that we have been supporting pass-through shows, which means that external shows that are hosted on other platforms like Libsyn or Blubrry or SoundCloud or other hosting platforms can be added to the Spreaker platform, and it would just be a pass-through. So that's something I've been encouraging the company to move more towards, because I don't believe that there's necessarily a threat to the business to actually do that in some ways. I think that there's, we put a lot of effort into our listening apps to add capabilities there. I think that they're beautiful and easy to use apps. And what we want to do is make sure that we have a full complement of content in there, that any listener could use those apps and get access to the top shows and podcasting.
I think I've just learned something then. So if I add an RSS feed to my Spreaker account, I can do that without taking up storage space?
Actually, all that stuff, like I did at Microsoft, all runs through me. So if you wanted to add your show to the Spreaker platform, you'd need to send me an email. Okay.
Because I've got a couple that I haven't added just because I didn't want to take up more of my hours on my account. And I was like, all right, well,
if you're hosting some shows on Libsyn or whatever, I have the ability to add shows to and they're primarily the Spreaker Studio apps or the Spreaker Podcast Radio apps that those will show up in.
Nice.
They don't show up on the website yet, but that's coming. But yeah, so we want to have a full complement of content that's beyond just the shows that are on the hosted platform. On Spreaker.
Yeah. And then, so if somebody wanted to contact you,
Rob@Spreaker.com.
There you go. You mentioned that earlier, how you've always been available. I remember when you worked for Microsoft and you used to give out your email, and I was like, this man is crazy.
And my phone number. I was giving out my phone number too.
Wow.
People were very, very respectful. I've talked about this many times on shows that I've been on. I was early friends with Mr. Robert Scoble, and he used to work at Microsoft too. And he and I talked about this topic at one point of just putting yourself out there. Scoble, you can easily find his phone number. You just go to his website. It's right on his front page.
Wow.
And you can call him. And it's the same thing, with me. I ask some respect from the standpoint of my time zone, but other than that, I can be reached.
I did get a phone call.
I think if you're out there and you're working in this community or you're in the technology community, it's a fairly small community, really. And I think being accessible, I think a lot of podcasters fall into this trap too of being all worried that their privacy is going to be violated, or people are going to, call them at all hours of night and pester them, and so they have to put this, this kind of like firewall around them of not being able to be reached. And I think that runs contrary to what my experience has been for many years, is just put your information out there. Know that you can be found if somebody really needs to find you and get a hold of you, and be accessible. And that's what I've always wanted to be.
Yeah, I have a Google Voice number on my website, and people will call that. And I did learn the hard way that at the end of the night, you can put that on Do Not Disturb, so that when the guy calls at 3 a.m. from Germany and goes, "Oh, wow, I'm sorry, I didn't think you'd actually answer." And I'm like, "Yes, I actually."
I've had that happen just a handful of times.
Yeah, I've only had it happen once.
Yeah, it's well worth the risk. That's just my own philosophy.
Rob, a bunch of us got in on the iHeartRadio deal way back a couple years ago. That got us some really sweet, my relationship with Spreaker is really sweet from a hosting standpoint. Going to iHeartRadio, I'm getting most of it at a very low, which means zero cost. Is that eventually going to expire and end? Are we going to be grandfathered in forever on that deal, where we did iHeartRadio and we got, I think, 5,000 hours or something allotted to us? Maybe I shouldn't have even said this because now it's going to shut off tomorrow. Is that relationship ever going to end? Am I eventually going to have to start paying for that?
I wouldn't think that that's going to change for those that have had it. Yeah.
Oh, good.
That's good to hear.
Now, I think that, speaking of the iHeartRadio folks, I think they are also trying to evolve their model. And Dave, you probably chime on this too, because I know that Libsyn has a relationship with them as well. They're in the process of changing their model a little bit, and it'll be interesting. They want to be more successful around podcasts, and I think that's a great direction for them. I've been encouraging them for a long time to develop their podcasting side more and more. hopefully they'll move more towards pass through.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
And that's another one where I think radio doesn't, like, they underestimate podcasting sometime, because when they first flipped the switch on for Libsyn, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll have people listed in a week. And 10 weeks later, we're going, it was like, so we had to keep telling people, yes, you've done all you need to do. It's taken them a couple months. Now they have since, it's not quite that long now, but they were really surprised on how many people wanted to put their show into that platform. So,
yeah. Well, and we can all keep our fingers crossed that Google will be a pass-through platform at some point too. So that would be good.
Yeah,
or just work outside the United States. That would be nice as well.
Yeah, well, small things like that, right?
Yeah. John asked a question, is it true you can't have any music on your show if you're on iHeartRadio? Yep, pretty much. It will get you. I had somebody, it was a rap show, and at the end of the show, they would play some song, whatever, Kanye West or whatever. And they're like, I can't find my show on iHeart anymore. So I'm going through and I'm like, this is really weird. I can't find it. And then I downloaded one of their shows and I'm just popping through. And at the end, all of a sudden I hear music and I'm like, and I found the reason why you're not on iHeart. So because there's some, I don't know if they're using, a Shazam-like interface or what, but I know on Google, the minute I did a podcast review show once and we were playing a guy's intro, not knowing that it was this like the gospel something hour, and this guy had music in his background. Well, it was actually a legitimate like song, and Google flagged it immediately. The minute I uploaded it, I was like, what's going on? So that technology exists really quick. And I've only been I'll celebrate a year with Libsyn next month. And I've only seen one takedown notice where somebody was playing an Eminem song and they politely came along and said, you need to get that out of there. So,
yeah, I've had it happen a few times. I've had to deal with that issue a couple of times, but yeah, you're right. It's pretty unusual.
Yeah. What's coming up in the future at this point? Now you've got do you know what's the new feature you're going to be working on? What do you think with the ad revenue?
Oh, I think that it's building on the monetization tools, and then the other one is the whole pass through thing being across the whole platform.
Nice.
So being able to add more, external feeds to the platform to just enable it to be a better listening experience.
Awesome. Well, Rob, I want to thank you for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to join you guys. You guys are both podcasting geeks, so that's why I always have fun coming on this show.
And you're getting ready to run over in a half hour. You'll go over to the New Media Show with Todd. That's always kind of it's great. There's a little break so everybody can go to the bathroom and then sit back down and watch more Rob over with Rob Greelee and Todd Cochran over at newmediashow.com. And, of course, you can find Rob at SpreakerLiveShow.com, which is I'm with Jim. I'm a big fan of that show. That's one that I'm like, there are some podcasts about podcasting that I like, okay. And then there's this one. I'm like, oh, cool. There's a new episode coming out. And, of course, you can find Jim over at theaverageguy.tv. You can find me at schoolofpodcasting.com. Use the coupon code LISTENER, and you can save on either a single course or sign up for a membership site. But and we are here every Saturday at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. Just go to askthepodcastcoach.com. And I'm really horrible at talking up stuff because I have another 39 seconds. So this is where we dance and bring out the monkeys and the balloons and anything else we want to do. But
monkeys and balloons? Where?
Exactly. And what was really fun today, the chat room was doing its own show about sponsorship and coffee and all sorts of other things. So thanks to the chat room. As always, you guys are always entertaining. And stick around. We'll have some post-show here in a second. But again, askthepodcastcoach.com/live every Saturday. Thanks so much.